Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. I'm Radha Priti, and I'm here with a group of seekers. We are reading through the Bhagavad Gita and talking about it and its relevance to our lives. And so happy to be here with you all. I was like getting ready this morning, thinking, like I was so looking forward to seeing you all this morning and hearing your thoughts and your experiences and we have some fun topics this morning. So I was actually like really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about them and how you can relate to them. So uh yeah, let's get right into it. Oh, if you want to join our family of seekers in the morning, you can go to our Instagram, Seekers Quest 108, and in the link tree, you can join the WhatsApp thread. And then I send out the links every session, every episode to join live. So please come and join us and share your hearts with us because this community I know is really holding me together here, and it's powerful. So thank you all for being here. Some of you just joined. Karina, Shauna, welcome. So happy you're here. So with that, let's get right into it. We're going to start at chapter 2, text 44 today. And just to refresh a little bit where we are in the Gita in this section, we're talking about karma. We're kind of comparing karma kanda, this new term that we learned last session, and karma yoga. And karma kanda is kind of this transactional relationship with God. Like we pray for material things that we think we want or we need, and then we hope that God fulfills our wishes. And in the Gita worldview, the perspective is that based off of the good deeds that you do in your life, in your next life, or even in this life, you'll reap good benefits. So maybe in your next life, you'll go to a higher planet. If you're in a lower body, you'll go to a higher body. And then the same would be true if you do bad deeds, you kind of devolve. So that would be kind of the karma kanda, and it's all within this material universe. It's just a material. It's for a materialistic religionists. And then karma yoga is working with detachment from the results of your actions and really doing it in a mood of service to divinity. And the idea is that this is what elevates you to the spiritual world, which is above the material universe that I just talked about. Material universe being earth, heaven, hell. That's material universe. And that's kind of where the karma kandas happens. And then if we can practice this karma yoga, which is what we're going to talk about more and more, what that means, what that looks like, this kind of relationship with God, where we can take ourselves out of the center and we can really try to serve the center. We can get to the spiritual world, which is above the material universe. So that's where we are. And we're going to start in chapter 2, text 44. I'll share my screen. And text 44 says, in the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So again, in 241, we talked about how in karma kanda, people that are, have this Amazon Prime kind of type relationship with God, this transactional relationship with God. There's so many material opulences and indulgences to kind of pull you away that you may get overly engrossed in, whether that's, satisfying the tongue, whether that's, enjoying opulent things, sex is in there, just things that we just enjoy in this material world. They really just satisfy the senses. It's on the level of the senses. They're many branched. There's so many of them, right? And then in the next verses, we talked about how the source of those many branches are indulgence and opulence. So again, you're chasing indulgence and opulence. That's what you're looking for, things to gratify the senses, and the options are plenty. Now it's saying that if we're chasing these branches, if we're chasing things to satisfy just our mere senses, that it can capture our consciousness, like our mind will get into it. And if our consciousness is too dominated by opulence and indulgence, it'll just pull our consciousness towards all of these worldly things. And this will make spiritual growth really difficult, right? Because we all know that whatever fills our consciousness fuels our actions. And it's not that we can't enjoy some of these things in life, right? We're still in this material world. We're not, enlightened beings yet. Like, yeah, we're going to enjoy some sense gratification. But it's important that these aren't the things that fuel us completely, like to become like our foundation to happiness and fulfillment. And I think we've all been in a yoga class where they say, wherever our attention goes, energy flows. So we just have to be careful what we're putting in this consciousness and what we're not putting in this consciousness, right? Are we taking that time every day for our spiritual sadhana to imbibe some of these teachings, to practice these spiritual practices, so that we can start to fill our consciousness with things that we know will lead to a more enduring, fulfilling, and happy life. Right? And this same theory applies like in a cognitive behavior theory. Therapy, cognitive behavior therapy. I know I learned this when I was in therapy. Wherever it's your actions, like the triangle of the three of thoughts, feelings, and actions, right? So it starts with a thought, and then it develops into a feeling, and then it develops into an action. And basically saying whatever is in your mind will manifest into your reality. Like if you have a thought that you have a relationship with a partner and you have a thought that you've done something wrong to upset them, right? Your feeling might be constant anxiety and walking on eggshells. And then your behavior might be constantly trying to appease the partner by sacrificing your own needs to avoid conflict, right? Has anybody ever got into that cycle? I've got into that cycle many times. And then it consumes you, right? You mistakenly think that like appeasing this person is what's going to bring you happiness. And that's really just what you're after, is just this sense gratification of like feeling loved by this other material being who honestly is really who is just as scarred as you are and confused and trying to find love too. So we get into these just like endless cycles. And it's just saying, hey, check where your consciousness is, check what you're seeking, check what you really think is going to bring you happiness, because that's what's going to manifest in your life, right? So we need to be careful where our mind is and set up these boundaries accordingly, and also try to get into some routines where we're putting healthy things in our mind, where we're putting things that are, more enduring. And sometimes we don't even know it. The other thing I've done before is like, have you ever liked somebody that you know wasn't good for you, that you knew would like not bring goodness for you? And I used to be in this pattern, and I would just like date them, right? And then I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I know that I shouldn't act on this, but like I would still entertain it in my mind, right? I would still like kind of enjoy the idea of it. Even though I wouldn't get like too close, I would still like enjoy the idea in my mind. And I remember one time I was telling my friend about this. She's like, Rachel, you just need to stop this. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not doing anything. I'm literally not doing anything. She's like, yeah, but you are in your mind. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm still attached to the idea in my mind. It's like, so their mind is so powerful and strong, and we really have to be careful. And again, the regulations in spiritual life, it's not to like restrict us, or because we're bad or because we can't handle it. It's because so many people have walked this path before us, and they know, and this is coming straight from Krishna, straight from divinity. They know how the mind works, and how it can so easily pull us, and how we really need to concentrate our focus and our attention and be intentional about it. So that's why we have regulations in life. It's like guardrails on the highway, so that we're not swaying way over to one side too much, and we can keep focused, keeping the main thing, just like a massive theme in this class, right? So daily sadhana is important. Fill our mind with spiritual practices, so that that's the lens of which we see life. And that's what we seek in our external life. And that's how it works. These internal spiritual practices, they fuel our external spiritual practices, which then fuel our internal spiritual practices. Right? So like if you have a sadhana where you wake up and you maybe read, or you come to a sangha like this, and you're really kind of digesting and assimilating, then it's going to make you want to maybe be more selfless in your service, right? You're going to be a little bit more mindful of these practices, and they're going to come out in the way that you interact and behave throughout your day. And then it will just keep fueling itself. But material infatuation does not allow us to go in a spiritual direction, right? And if we get too engrossed in that idea, right, that, oh, if I can just make this person happy, I'll be happy, we're going to end up in a dark hole, right? And we've all been there. I know I've been there. Right. So we try to keep going in the spiritual direction, because that's where we can make progression and we can become absorbed, and where we can really liberate ourselves from this bondage in this material existence. Does anybody want to share anything about that? We have some other
I
fun
can
themes too. So, oh, great, please.
I could share that I really related to what you were saying about like knowing that this person is like not the best, but still continuing to engage. I relate to that a lot. And I feel like there's a level of confusion because, on one hand, I feel like I'm ignoring red flags with people in friendships and relationships. But on the other hand, I realize that all humans are flawed and
Mm,
everybody, screws up sometimes. So you have to have like grace, compassion for that. So it's like, what do you want to put up with? And if I were to try to find perfection in someone without any flaws, then you would be alone. So it's hard for me to determine, to decipher between those two things.
yeah, I totally get that. And I think we talked so much about this Guru Sadhu Sastra that can help us in our path, kind of determine, kind of decipher some of these things. I just had an experience with this friend. We had this exchange, and he got really upset with me and said, I don't think I want to continue a relationship with you. And it like hurt my feelings so much. And I was like, no, please, anything. Like, I was just like pretty much on my knees apologizing. And then I met with my spiritual teacher the next day, and I actually sent them like it was all over text and voice memo. So I sent them the whole thing, and I was like, will you please advise me on like what to do? Please help me with like what I'm not seeing, where I went wrong. And they're like, Radha, you really shouldn't be apologizing for things when you're not in the wrong. Like they listened to the whole thing. They're like, I don't think you did anything wrong here. You're very kind, very loving. I don't think you should be apologizing for things when you're not wrong. And I'm like, oh, okay. And and to me, it was like, okay, maybe my mistake was just like I got too close to that person, and maybe that's just like I shouldn't be, but this is what I mean. Like we have friends, you have family, you have, like-minded people that you really trust that can advise you and that can maybe see things that you don't, one way or the other, and can help you with that. Because yes, sometimes it is so hard and we doubt ourselves and we don't know. But I think having that family, that support system, like hopefully we can all be that support system for each other, and we can help each other. And that's not to say often, most of the time when I send these things, it's like, oh, yep, you should have done this. You did this wrong. You did this wrong. And these are just opportunities for us to learn ourselves. But what do you think of that, Erica? Okay, Trevor, do you want to share something?
Sorry, I was giving my husband a goodbye hug for work.
Oh,
But I heard you, and I do think that, yeah, having a support system to help decide is key and essential, and having this kind of community definitely brings clarity to that.
thank you. Thank you for sharing. Trevor, do you want to share something?
Yeah, that can be a confusing one whenever you're toggling from material to spiritual desires. But I think just like how the Gita teaches you how to dovetail your desires, it's like we have this need to please people, and whenever we change the primary target to Krishna, we're pleasing everyone. But if you're caught in a relationship that makes that really difficult, and your partner is creating more obstacles than they are supporting you on your internal progress, that's whenever there has to be boundaries set. And if that can't be done, then they shouldn't be your partner, basically. You should create stronger boundaries. But if you're pleasing Krishna, you're pleasing everyone. And Krishna sends the spiritual master in your external world uh, so that you're able to make progress by serving them, because their main priority is to help you and everyone else that comes to them. So that's it's not about not wanting to serve or to not have desires at all, uh, or no thoughts at all. It's about dovetailing your material thoughts and your material desires into spiritual ones. That's all.
Mhm. Trevor's so wise.
Thanks.
Appreciate you, Trevor.
Appreciate you.
Okay, so if anybody else wants to share, please, or we can move on.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I resonate with that so much, actually. And I think the hardest part for me personally, like, letting go of those relationships that don't really serve, my higher good, my spiritual well-being. I become so attached to those that I've like created friendships with. And actually within the past 2 years, just coming back into my Krishna consciousness and practicing more, I had a falling out with one of my closest friends I was friends with for 15 years. And it's just like, it was hard, but at the same time, when we let go of, the way I see it, it's like we let go of this old life, this old way of thinking, this old modality. And when we start to practice the new people come, like this whole Sangha has come. And even though I can still grieve, missing that friendship to some degree, or just not being able to relate in that friendship as much as I used to, I have so many more new people to relate with. And yeah, it's difficult. It takes time to build those new relationships and those new friendships. But ultimately, it's being more authentic within myself and my spiritual practice that it's going to be better. But it's like, you're still sometimes caught in like, well, do I be compassionate and hold on to that relationship? And I think the pain is more when you're like in that limbo of like transitioning. And yeah, it's like letting go of like being overly compassionate for those material connections and remembering that Krishna will always provide newer spiritual connections when you're moving more towards that, So I actually just wrote about that this morning because I was just feeling that this morning. Like I was like, man, I'm like missing people right now. And I'm like, wait, I have Gita Sangha, like, I'm gonna have connection. So thank you.
Wow, another wise soul. Thank you so much, Mariah. Appreciate you.
I just wanted to just piggyback on what Maria shared, and I feel the same. Like I have been this few months, or I think for some time, I have been just feeling very lonely, and I think I'm having a hard time connecting with my even immediate family and friends. And not to put you on spot, rather, but yeah, she's like my Krishna consciousness friend who reaches out to me I don't know how she knows. It's like it's like when I'm down, I get a text from Radha saying, "Hey, come hop in there." And today morning was one of those, and I woke up. I actually woke up real like 4 a.m. and I was just ruminating. I'm like, my life is this, that. I don't have anybody. I'm so lonely. And then I get a text from Radha, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think that's true. And then I think like I appreciated how you also incorporated CBT and just said that I had to tell myself something different and something new. And your text was a proof that, you know what, maybe I don't have the exact people that I want right now, but Krishna has other people lined up that Krishna thinks I need at this given time. So I connected with that. So thank you.
Hmm. Puppy's such an old soul. And Puppy, you're the only one who doesn't see your magic. Okay, so let's move on to text 245. Text 245 says, the Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So the Vedas is this vast, it's a vast like volumes and volumes of books of this philosophy. And it's kind of progressive, right? And the biggest portion of the Vedas deals with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane, right? So when we say fruitive activities, we mean that I'm doing this action so that I can get this, right? Like I'm praying for a good husband so that then I can get a good husband and that will make me happy. And that's not bad in itself, but it's just saying that this is where most people are and what the Vedas cater to mostly. They give instructions to people on how to live a God-centered life and to achieve these things, attain these things, because it recognizes that this is really what most people want. It's just happiness in this world. And that's through the sense gratifications. They're looking for that through sense gratifications around them. And 99% of people are material minded, right? We see this anytime we turn on our Instagram, and it's like, people that have all the followers are either like rich, telling you that they can help you make a lot of money, really beautiful, that are just like nice to look at, or maybe teaching you some kind of fitness routine so you can be beautiful like them and be happy. These kinds of things, like that's what sells on Instagram, right? That's marketing. It's like, tell me how to get a lot of money or be really beautiful or be really powerful. These things fall in the category of like sense gratification. And that's the large bulk of the Vedas. They tell people, okay, you want to do that? That's fine. That's what you're, desiring in this life. No problem. Let me show you how to, incorporate a relationship with God in that so that you can kind of get started on your spiritual journey. Even though that's maybe not the highest, you're having a relationship with God, and that's a good place. So that's the large bulk of the Vedas. But what is needed by most will be prominent, but that doesn't mean that that's the main purpose. So there's this section of the Vedas, what we're studying, the Bhagavad Gita, it's in the Upanishads. I think maybe it's like the 7th book of the Upanishads. It's kind of like towards the middle-ish of the Vedas, that teaches us how to have this kind of detached, selfless, loving relationship with God, where we can really surrender our own desires and our own thoughts and needs of what we think will make us happy, and really try to serve God just selflessly, serve divinity, become servants of divinity instead of trying to serve our senses all the time. So that's what we're doing here. Because as long as the material body exists, there's going to be actions and reactions in the material conception of life, right? We know that. If you treat somebody poorly, you're probably going to be treated poorly in return. We see this right in front of our eyes, right? And this cycle creates bondage in the material world. We get attached and we get detached. We get happy and then we get sad. This is the cycle, and it just keeps going. And so this verse is saying we have to learn tolerance in the face of these dualities, such as happiness and distress, or cold and warmth. And by tolerating such dualities, we could become free from the anxieties regarding gain and loss. And the process to do this, again, we can't just white knuckle it. We can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to become tolerant and act like nothing bothers me. No, we have to attach to something higher, like divinity. And that's what this practice teaches us to do. attached to something higher. So that's 245. So we'll go to 246 now. 246 says, all purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. This is saying, so in 41, again, we talked about karma kanda versus karma yoga. Karma kanda being that Amazon Prime transactional relationship with God for people that are seeking sense gratification. Karma yoga is it's just working and dedicating the fruits of your actions to God in a selfless, loving manner. Right? Now this text is saying that all of the wells that we seek material pleasure in, we think we'd be beautiful, and we're going to get pleasure from being beautiful, or we're going to be rich and we're going to get pleasure from being rich. All of these wells can be served by a great reservoir of spiritual knowledge. So the idea is that the material pleasure that we get, it gives us some amount of pleasure, like a little well of water. But when we grow spiritually, the pleasure is so vast that whatever we got from the other things, we feel like we got so much more of. And it's like when we seek spiritual growth, we won't care for those small pleasures anymore. It'll be like minuscule. It's like I haven't had my baby yet, but everybody, all the mothers will say, you have your baby and it's like your whole perspective on life changes. Like what you thought was important is no longer important, right? Like you're so satisfied with just that little baby and the unconditional love that you feel and you're experiencing, and you're kind of like wrapped up in this bond with your baby, that it's like all those things I thought that I needed or that I thought were important are just not. And that's the same kind of thing when we feel that unconditional love from Krishna, because a child and a mother, that's the greatest example of, that's the closest thing we can ever get to experiencing, to really understanding God's love for us, right? And when we can grow close to God and we can feel that shelter and that love, other things that we used to seek for pleasure seem kind of like empty or kind of like dry, right? Like this feeling is so profound and so real. These other little things that I used to go to, fill my cup, to fill the God-shaped hole in my heart, just aren't really doing it for me anymore. And that's what we'll experience if we continue this practice and we lean into it. So that's 46. We're going to go to 47, and there's a couple more really good life lessons and discussion points here. So I'm excited. Again, I love when we get to these parts because I love to hear what you guys have to say and what you guys think.
I can relate to the change in priority a lot because I've always been in that kind of mind state where with like, but I used to be very much into like the law of attraction when I was younger. And I had like a vision board, and the things I wanted were like, big house and car, and, those material things were like super important. And now that my health has taken a turn for the worse, the most important thing to me is just being well. Like I don't care about being rich or achieving anything material. I just want to have a healthy body. But I'm kind of curious with this discussion because we're talking about material versus non-material. Do you think that wanting or desiring, my dog has input too. Do you think that desiring like a healthy body is because our body is like material? Is desiring a healthy body considered material?
Yeah, so we talk about material examples a lot because it makes it's the world that we live in, and it's how we relate and interact, and it kind of gives us like a bridge so that we can start to understand some of these spiritual concepts. So wanting to have a healthy body in itself, I guess it depends on what you want to do with that body. If what you want to do with that body is serve your senses, it can be very material. It can be very egocentric. If what you want to do with that body is serve divinity, if you want to take care of your body and nourish your body and love your body because you recognize that that divinity resides inside of it, as we're all part and parcel of God, and that our job here, our duty here, is to serve God. Then it's a beautiful thing. And the reality is, we're all not totally selfless. Like we can't just show up and say, okay, I'm going to be selfless, but we can say, okay, that's where I want to be one day. And we can trust in the process to help get us there. And in that, we will make progress, and we will find fulfillment.
Yeah, I think with selflessness, the important first step, I think, like we touched on this last night or when we talked, is like compassion for yourself first, because I've realized that you have to love yourself, because my new purpose that I found, that I decided my new dream in life is, what I'd like to do with it is, I would like to help people with disabilities, chronic illness, and chronic pain find meaning, joy, and purpose in their lives. But I realized that I want to do that, and I feel like I bring worth to the world because I'm doing that for others. I want to contribute because I feel like I'm giving that to the world. It's still not like for myself, if that makes sense. So I'm having trouble like having that compassion for me.
Wow. You're so thoughtful and introspective and sincere. And that in itself will get you so far. But what you brought up is a beautiful point, that the only way we can really give true compassion, true selfless love and compassion, is if it's from an overflowing cup. Right? We can't give from an empty cup. It has to be from an overflowing cup. So if we do really, that is where the work starts. That is where the work starts, is giving ourselves grace, giving ourselves patience, giving ourselves love, compassion. And then from there, it overflows, and it's natural. If not, it can feel a little bit forced. And that's where you kind of can get into some of these codependent behaviors that I've spent a good amount of my life in, where it's like, you're really doing it to feel better about yourself. And sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. We sometimes have to understand that it's just a practice, and none of us are there, and we're all trying our best. And the more introspective, sincere, thoughtful we can be around our approach, the better off we're going to be. So I'd say just keep doing it. Keep your goal, but in the meantime, yeah, maybe pour into yourself, because that's really where it all starts. Thanks for bringing that point up. Trevor, do you want to share something?
Yeah, I like everything everyone's saying, as always. I seen a hanging Hanuman in Karina's car. That's pretty awesome. I have one of those too. But it made me happy. I have one hanging from my fan too right now. But yeah, Krishna being the super soul within the heart, guiding us from within. He doesn't want us to sell ourselves short. That's what it's all about. If our primary focus is on material surface level desires, then we're selling ourselves short. And like Radha said, we're not going to get full satisfaction from it. It's very limited. And what we are doing whenever we shift into a deeper way of desiring, like it's like you can still have the desire of having a beautiful husband or wife and whatnot, and a big house if you want that, whatever it may be, as long as your primary focus is on your reason for it. Like, is this big house gonna facilitate my spiritual growth? Am I gonna become more conscious by having these material desires? Otherwise, it's more of a blessing if Krishna keeps you from attaining certain desires until you're ready for that. Because if everything we wanted showed up at our doorstep, we wouldn't be ready for it, and it would just sidetrack us from becoming more conscious. So Krishna, within the heart, he knows all the details. We don't have to focus on that primarily. Let all that happen as a byproduct. Focus first on the soul, how am I going to benefit internally by having this big building? Can I use it to help others facilitate their consciousness and all that? That's where things start happening for you whenever you're like, how can I serve my consciousness, and how can I help others even become more conscious by being around me, and this and that. And then everything else just happens. All the details unfold in the byproducts of your journey. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you, Trevor. Just
You're
summed it all up. Just summed it all right up. Okay, let's move on to 247. This will be our last one, and we have some other really fun discussion points here too. 247 says, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be too attached to not doing your duty. So here, Krishna is saying you have a right to work, but don't get too attached to the results, right? Don't get too attached to working. So we'll talk here about the difference between a goal and a result, because a goal is good. We want to have goals when we start something. It's a general statement of what we want to do. It helps us provide clarity at the beginning. It's really pretty necessary. But we don't want to get too attached to a specific outcome of that. And that would be what the result is, right? If we get too focused on the results, they can actually distract us and give us anxiety, right? We can't be too inspired by results to do work. And that's what it's saying. The Gita is teaching us to be process focused and not product focused. So like a student who's working really hard in school, don't get too focused on doing it so that you can get that A or that B, whatever mark that you want. Really, you're going to get the most out of it if your overall goal is to really learn and absorb and apply, right? That's really the goal of a student. It's not to get an A or a B, and if you get too focused on that A or B, you're going to get anxiety when you don't get it, and you're going to you could even lose complete track of the actual goal, which is oftentimes more meaningful and more fulfilling and deeper. So that's why we want to try to live these process-focused lives, not product-focused, because product focus, we can easily veer off the highway, right? We get anxiety because we don't get the result that we want, and then we start feeling bad about ourselves, and then we propagate the next bad action, right? So we just try to keep going, dedicating, with as much detachment as possible, and giving it all to Krishna. And this makes us connected with action, intention, and self. And so in 238, Krishna says, don't fight. Don't consider happiness, or he says, sorry, just fight. Don't consider happiness or distress. That's when he tells Arjuna that don't think about the happiness or distress, just do your duty. Because in material consciousness, we experience these waves of happiness and distress. That's what this material existence is. We're probably all going to log off this computer and have these waves of material happiness and distress. We try to attain happiness, we try to avoid distress. But in spiritual consciousness and yoga, we rise above the waves of happiness and distress. And that's where we get supreme happiness and fulfillment. And it's not this pattern of that we get stuck in, this cycle of happiness and distress. So it's like if we're working towards a treasure, and that treasure is worth like $1 million, and there's a lot of tribulations and temptations on the way to the treasure, right? Opportunities to gain, $5, or opportunities to lose $5. We have to know not to get too distracted chasing the big or small bills, right? Because if the goal's up here and it's multi-million-dollar treasure, and these little $5 bills are distracting us, we could easily veer off into fighting a battle over here over a $5 bill when really the big treasure's up here, and we're missing the point because we're just getting too caught up in these little distractions that have very little value. And that's what Krishna is saying here, is this material existence, these ups and downs that we experience, it's so small compared to the prize. And if we get too caught up in it, we won't get to that prize. right? So when we're working, it's best to know that to the extent that we are detached to the material results, the more we can progress towards the spiritual results. This can lead to spiritual realization to the extent that it's done with detachment. So we have to be attached to something bigger than the immediate. And this brings up the point. This is the first point for us to talk about, that we're the makers of our destiny, but not the masters of our destiny. So we have to understand this. Destiny is essentially the sum total of our past karma, good and bad. So those deeds that you did, 2 weeks ago, if you haven't experienced a good or bad reaction from them, don't worry, you will. Even the deeds that you've done lifetimes ago, it's not necessarily linear. It's not like you do something and then the karma comes at you right away. We don't know when it's going to come. A portion of that karma stockpile from our past combines with our present actions to determine the results of the actions that you do today. Right? So sometimes we'll see in our life, like a small deed reaps exceptional payback, but a small mistake faces catastrophe. Right? And this is because our past karma is always at play. It's part of that equation. That's what we call our destiny. So basically, the result of something is due to our present action and our past action. So however, we don't determine whether destiny will manifest positively or negatively at a certain time. God does. So God controls that. So our role in our present actions in shaping results is contributive, but not definite. So we don't have total control over what happens. You can try your best to show up in a relationship, and the relationship could still fail. Right? And you just don't have control over that. And sometimes that's just something that we have to accept. And this is why the Gita urges us to do our duty, but not get too attached to the results. Understanding that we're the makers of our destiny, right? We're really everything that's happening to us is a combination of our good and bad karma from this life, from past lives, wherever we are. But understand that we're not the masters of it. And in that, we can learn to gracefully accept whatever results that we get, right? Understanding our limited control, because we don't know when that karma is going to show up. Again, you could give everything you have to something and get nothing from it. And in that, we can't get too bogged down into that material outcome because it will distract us from the bigger prize. And this is when we talk about what happens when work doesn't work, right? Like when our efforts aren't enough. For example, we have a falling out with someone and we do all that we can to make up for it and improve the relationship, but it doesn't work, right? What can we do? And in this, we have to seek detachment, right? When we work to improve a relationship, the outer result is that the relationship improves. But the inner result is that we become more mature and empathetic. So we have to learn to kind of see these inner benefits. So even if, you have a falling out and you really want to mend it and it doesn't work, you can take that opportunity for spiritual growth and progression, right? You can reflect. You can take that opportunity to become more mature and empathetic. And in that way, the outer result is not just determined by our endeavor, but also by our destiny. So if our destiny is unfavorable, then the result doesn't come despite our best efforts. So what do? We can't work just based off of that outer result, right? We have to learn to appreciate the inner result. We have to learn that, even though things didn't go the way I wanted, I can still use that as a growth opportunity. And in that, I can become more loving, more compassionate, more kind, and ultimately closer to Krishna. And that's why it's so important that we don't get too carried away by what's manifesting on the outside, because that's exactly what it can happen. We can get carried away, and then that can become our internal reality, and then that will propagate the next actions in our lives, right? So if we stay focused on the internal, just accept, okay, that wasn't the result that I wanted. That person's, that relationship is it's pretty much over. What can I take away from that so that I can show up in future relationships in a different way, and I can grow spiritually. And in that way, we can evolve and expand our capacity to learn and to love and to ultimately connect with divinity. What do you guys think about that?
I love it all. I'm having like such like few different realizations. So first of all, you said, don't be attached to the result. Love be in the process. And at work, there's like a little thingy, and it has a quote on it, and it says, "Love what you do what you love, and love what you do." And even before I was like in this class, or even like had this understanding of Gita, I was just going through like my own transformation a couple years ago when I started working here at Fresh Twist. And I would see that all the time. And I was like, yeah, like, love what you do. Like, it's not about the money. It's not about what you gain from it. It's about doing what you love, And I love working with food, health food, and things like that. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm learning to love what I do. And that was like, just like it was like Krishna was like talking to me even then, And so that made me think of that quote. And so I'm like having a lot of gratitude of like, wow, like how much God was in my life even then when I wasn't super practicing or anything, And then the next thing that came to me, it's just a gratitude for like seeing like, wow, how I like am receiving, like, even though I'm not like physically studying Gita, I wasn't before. It's like so interesting how these themes are coming up now through the Gita, and I'm seeing how they were like being applied in my life, and they were being shown to me in my life like previously. And so I'm just having a lot of gratitude for like just recognizing how this wisdom comes to you when you are more reflective, when you do go through those transitions. It's like you get these bits of information, and it's just like showing you like someone's there with you, guiding you, even when you're not fully practicing and you're not even fully aware of it. It's like it's there. And yeah, just having that gratitude for that. So thank you. If that makes sense.
So
It was a little over
nice.
the
No, that's beautiful. Thank you. And if we can really practice that level of detachment, like if we have a falling out with someone or an argument with someone, if we can understand, all that we can do is show up and accept responsibility for what we've done, be kind, loving, compassionate, and wherever they are on the other side, we can't control. We have to detach from. And in that, if we don't get too bogged up in the outcome, if we don't worry too much about, okay, this, what's going to happen to this relationship, they can really even, it's disarming, right? Because it's when we get too caught up in the outcome that the nasty comes out in us, right? That's when the nasty comes out in us. So if we can kind of stay on our side and think, really try to use it as an opportunity for our own internal purification, and what can I do better, and not focus so much on the outcome or the other person or why the outcome isn't the way that it's supposed to be, right? We can both evolve, and on the bigger picture of things, we have the best shot of really mending any fences with anybody. That's just the example I've been focusing on this class, but this could apply to anything.
I really appreciated the reminder that, we can just, once we hop off this call, that we will go into our material, high and low. And I think I internalize, that's a barrier for me. I think that's my, all or nothing mentality of thinking. I think that's something I'm working on. I think, that's a barrier for me because I internalize that, Poppy, you're not spiritual enough, you're not sattvic enough, you're not Hindu enough, you're not this enough, you're not that enough. And I'm like, and then I go into, not screw this, oh, that's the wrong word. It goes into like, I don't think I can get to a place where I can do this right. Everybody's doing it right, and there's something wrong with me. And I really like the reminder that, what, even spiritual journey, spiritual path, it comes in waves. It's not a linear journey. And I really needed this reminder again, because I am somebody that I'm really hard on myself. I feel like there's everything wrong with Poppy and everybody's doing everything right. Even if it comes to like, connecting with Krishna, I'm like, I don't think Krishna wants me on his side because I am with this. So it just validated, and I really needed to hear this again. So thank you so much that, maybe those ups and downs I'm going through is just part of this spiritual journey, because like you said, I'm not the controller, and I'm going to have some limits, and some limits are going to, come in where I'm going to feel less than. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your vulnerable heart. And let me tell you, none of us are doing it right. Like, we're all there just trying, and that's the process. I mean, if we had made it, we wouldn't be here. We'd be in the spiritual world, right? So we're all just figuring this stuff out, and we try, we stumble, we fall. It's we get back up, and that's what this community is what we're here trying to do together, is get back up. And we all love you, Popey, and I hope you can give some love, nourishment to yourself, because you deserve it.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else want to share anything?
Hare
Baba
Krishna, everyone.
Mahini.
I just wanted to share that I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate this this Sangha, the opportunity to learn and grow with this community. And what you were saying, well, what everyone was saying, it truly resonated with me. But you were saying something about the opportunity that we have. Everything is an opportunity, just being able to be reminded that these situations, no matter what it is, whether it's with relationships, jobs, family, it's an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity for us to reflect and say, oh, how is this an opportunity for me to lean on Krishna? And just to have that reminder it was something that I really needed to hear this morning. So it's super simple, but at the same time, it's very profound. Sometimes we need that little bit of medicine, right at the time when we need it, at the moment when we need it. So that's how I feel. It's just knowing that we are not the controllers. And like you said to the lady just now, I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name, but you were just sharing with, oh, Poppy. You were just sharing with her that, we're all screwed up. It just made me giggle, because like you said, we'd be in the spiritual world if we weren't. So this is why we're here. We're here for the opportunity to make things better. And so so grateful for each and every opportunity to actually rise to the occasion to be better in my spiritual life, and be able to be an example for other people in a positive way, so they'll have something better to see. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. That was beautifully articulated. You got lots of hearts too during your share. So
Thank you,
everybody's appreciating you.
Love you all. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else before we leave our safe little bubble for the day?
Hi, Radha.
Hi, Lakshmi. Are you healing? Are you better?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I just wanted to reflect something on just now what Baba Mai said. Like Krishna has given us some medicine, and he gives the medicine at the right time, but we don't know why it is, because medicines are not always sweet. They are bitter sometimes. And I was in that situation too. And so I was like crying. I was going depressed. Why all these things are happening to me? And later on, after stepping into the Krishna consciousness, and that too happened like miraculously. It was like our life was like in a battle. And myself and my husband, we both were stressed out, and the relationship was very fragile. And at that time, Krishna sent his devotees into our lives. And fortunately, we both took it. And that's the greatest thing that happened. So that bitter medicine started working later on. And now when I reflect and look back, So what I was thinking that was so miserable situation, and that actually happened for good, so that I am able to move forward, leaving those material things aside and focusing on the spirituality. And also, like you said, we are all trying here. And even now, I fall. I'm trying to go, but I fall. And I pick myself up, and then I seek help from the other devotees so that I can stand up again. Like when I fall on the ground, I need some help, and you guys pick me up the same way spiritually. Also, when I'm falling, Krishna is giving the help through the devotees. And this is what this Sangha is. I really love this Sangha, and I would like to participate more. I'm like missing some parts of it, but I want to participate more, and I will try that. And thank you so much, Radha, for facilitating this.
Thank you for coming and sharing. It's so nice to hear from you. Okay. Well, thank you all. And I'll see you all on Monday, hopefully. All these are posted online on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so everything. Well, thank you too, Anita. One day we have to hear from you, Anita. I won't call you out, but I want to hear your story someday.
Sure. It's just that I'm working at this time on
Okay.
Mondays and Thursday. I'm working. But yeah, someday I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Bo.